Good afternoon. Welcome to the October 24th committee meetings for Bellingham City Council. Our first committee meeting this afternoon is Public Works, Public Safety, and Terry Bordeman is the chair.
Thank you, Pinky. Joining me on the committee today is Jean Knutson and Roxanne Murphy. We have 3 items before the committee. The first is a bid award for water main replacement program. Ted?
Thank you, Ted Carlson, Public Works Department. Yes, before the council today is a bid award for our 2016 annual water main replacement program. The work is along West Holly Street and E Street. We had a good group of contractors submit 9 bids on this project. The lowest responsive and responsible contractor is Ram Construction. Staff is recommending council award bid, and there's a map of the vicinity map of where the mains will be replaced, and we're happy to answer any questions that you might have about the bid award.
Okay. Jean?
Move approval. Looks good to me.
Any other comments? Okay. We have a motion before us. Any comments from council? No? Okay. All those in favor of recommending approval tonight, answer aye.
Aye.
Okay, that was easy. We will recommend approval tonight. The next item is a Post Point Treatment Plant Biosolids Project update.
Thank you. In the past, staff has come before council within the last several years and talked a little bit about the need to address how we handle our solids down at Post Point sometime in the near future. We just completed, as you know, the upgrade to Post Point, which dealt with the secondary treatment process. Now it's time for us to start looking in a little bit more detail at how we handle solids down at Post Point. Currently, the city operates 2 multiple hearth furnaces. They are either beyond or approaching their useful life cycle. They're still functioning, but we certainly need to look at how we're going to address solids in the future. So we're going to give a brief report on that today. This item is for information only, but we wanted to make sure that council was aware of the planning process and what our next steps are. And with that, I'll turn it over to Eric and Rob Johnson, and they'll go through a bit of a presentation.
Thanks, Ted. We don't actually have a PowerPoint presentation, so we can turn the lights back on.
Glad. I don't want graphic items.
Add some light to the subject, but let's appreciate that. So as Ted mentioned, we are getting started a little more earnestly on a look at the biosolids management down at Post Point. And if you recall, with the treatment upgrades with the secondary treatment, that was about an 8 to 10 year process. Planning of that started in early 2005, and construction wrapped up in 2014, 2015. This is a very similar scope of scale of a type of a project, both in terms of effect to the plant as well as the dollar value. Replacement of the solids management system is upwards of about a $50 million endeavor. So that's certainly not something that we would take lightly and look to do very quickly. But it does take a significant amount of time and effort and thought to make those types of very substantial decisions for the community. Knowing that it's a big decision, we want to make that very deliberate process, but also make sure that we're capturing the goals of the community and capturing the intent of the council in terms of the goals and legacies as it relates to the environment and long-term sustainable decisions. So we're approaching this project with what's commonly referred to as the triple bottom line plus approach. There are sustainable practices that looks at the environment, the financial practice, the financial viability, the technical availability, and whether that is a good decision in totality. Not looking at the cheapest solution, but looking at biosolids as a resource for the community and finding an effective way to manage that. We do know that incineration that we're currently using is very effective, but it has some downsides as well. So as we look into the future, how will we manage those biosolids in a way that's reflective of the community values and not just the cheapest way to get rid of that product. So Rob's got a little bit more specifics about the contract. We are looking. That contract has been really moved forward. We did go through an extensive selection process to hire a consultant. I think our biggest message today is that we're moving forward. We're going to continue on. You'll see in the packet, and Rob can speak to kind of the mission statement for our project that we hope to carry through over the next many years. But I just want to really communicate that we're looking to this for the long term. It's a big decision that's going to have to be made, but we're narrowing that decision down. About 3 years ago, we looked at a couple of different options, one of which was to continue with the incineration. We're moving away from that decision and looking at an on-site management system, and Rob can speak to that more specifically, but there's pros and cons to that as well. So we'll let that. I'll turn it over to Rob to talk about specifics about where we're at with the contract and some of the technical aspects of it.
Hi, I'm Robert Johnson. I'm the superintendent of plants with Public Works. I'm here to provide update and an opportunity to answer any questions on the solids handling project at the Post Point Wastewater Treatment Plant. We're continuing to build on past recommendations through a biosolids study to provide direction and high-level review alternative management methods beyond the current incineration process. Yeah. Perfect. Thank you. Yeah. The city maintains a secondary wastewater treatment plant and incinerates an average of 4,100 dry tons of biosolids each year. The incineration process faces several challenges and is limited in meeting some of the objectives laid out by the City Council's adopted strategic commitments and legacy statements. Some of the key components of the project include developing screening criteria for biosolids management techniques, public education and outreach, off-site alternative analysis, resource and energy recovery, risk assessment, peer review, and development of planning level capital, operation, and maintenance costs. One of the key features and drivers behind this scope of work developed for the project includes a mission statement. We use the mission statement as a guideline development tool for the project and as a means to define the decision-making process. The building blocks for the mission statement include values identified in the triple bottom line approach. The triple bottom line is an evaluation method including environmentally, fiscally, technically, and socially sustainable framework. Once the staff and panel and the consultants confirm the technology for biosolids management, the project team will divide the project into several phases. The project will include 3 phases of planning with the option to include additional phases of implementation. Upgrading the method of biosolids management is a project poised to take advantage of newer proven biosolids management technology to develop sustainable, environmentally responsible, and socially acceptable plan to employ energy recovery at the Post Point Wastewater Treatment Plant and treat biosolids as a renewable resource as opposed to a waste product. So I'm here to also answer any questions about the contract.
One more final point on that, if I might. So as part of this initial design or planning work, we've got an extensive public outreach process to gather input and feedback as to what we're doing and how we're doing that, and how that, when the eventual reconfiguration of the plant comes forward, what that might look like and what impacts that might have to the direct surrounding neighborhood. That was pretty important. We went through the last upgrade to Post Point. We'll continue that outreach effort in this next phase and hope to make sure that we're keeping people informed as we move along.
Gene?
Would part of that be the cost and
Yes.
the where we would get the funding, or that would be you guys?
Yes, a key component of this when we're looking at a very large improvement is how do we pay for that. So this first phase looks at not only what we do, but how we do it and how we pay for that. That will dovetail nicely into the next 2 or 3 or if not 4 years down the road when we start looking at the impacts to ratepayers and what those might be. We don't know what those are yet, so I wouldn't speculate, but there will be an impact for sure.
Yeah. Under fiscal impact, it says the cost of the contract's $880,000. What are we getting for $880,000? That's a lot of money
it's a lot of money.
without doing any,
Well, what this results in is that, well, on a $50 million project, we can expect to spend 15 to 20% of that cost on engineering efforts, and a portion of that is the feasibility analysis, the preliminary planning, which helps us select what specific functions we're going to put into there. So what do we get out of that? We get the framework and the plan that leads to the next step, which is the engineering. So it helps us evaluate the financial impacts. It helps us evaluate how do we manage that much material on site, how do we lay that out. It's a planning level document. But it produces the plan that leads to the next step, which is the engineering, which leads to the construction. So Rob talks about those initial phases, those planning phases. This is step 1. Step 2 will be more refined engineering. Step 3 gets us the construction documents.
So, but this 880,000 is just this first
Step, yeah.
step without any of the engineering or without,
It's
just gives
hard.
us a plan.
That's correct.
That's-
The hard engineering will come at the later third phase, but we could expect that cost to be significantly higher than the 800,000. Out of a $50 million project, which is where we'd expect this to come into, you could expect to spend about 20% on engineering designs.
Okay. Michael?
Thanks, Terry. I had a very similar reaction, and you still haven't allayed my concerns. You said this is a narrower decision, we won't need screening criteria, and this is just a planning level document that will be delivered. In 2012, we already had a report that already narrowed the decision and recommended anaerobic digestion with sludge drying as the most viable option. You say we need screening criteria. The report says right here, or the memo says, we want something to be environmentally sustainable, fiscally responsible, using proven technology, and socially acceptable. We want to develop biosolids into a sustainable resource and to maximize resource recovery, and want reliable technology over a 50-year lifespan. I think we've got the criteria we need. I really am. I think we don't need $880,000. I think we've probably already got half of this in-house, already in our brains.
There are several. I would agree that we've come a long ways from looking at do we go with incineration or digestion or to some other technology. We've narrowed that down to digestion. We know that decision is there. There are other decisions that need to be looked at as to how we manage that specific process, both on site and where that project goes once it's gone through the digestion process. So once we decide to put anaerobic digesters in, which I think we have made that decision to do, the other decisions that come out of that is how do we capture energy off of that? How much energy do we capture? What do we do with the product when it comes out of the digester? Do we then dry that and pelletize it? Do we compost it? Do we land apply it out in the community? How many trucks does that result in coming in out of Post Point on a regular basis or not? At what cost does that produce to do that? So it's a multi-layered decision that we need to go through, and I 100% agree that we don't want to waste resources for decisions we've already made. And in our mind, we are not doing that. We are moving forward with the decision that said we looked at 3 alternatives. We've narrowed that down to 1. That option is anaerobic digestion. The next series of decisions will be what type and to what level of degree do we do that level of digestion on site. One of the things that we're also looking at, to some degree where we can, is are there opportunities to partner with other regional operators within Whatcom County to use that resource to benefit to the region as well. We want to make sure that we're asking that question and answering that question so that we don't lose an opportunity to take advantage of something that might already exist in the county. We recognize, however, that we're the big player within the county, where we manage about 4,000 dry tons of solids on an annual basis. Some of the other smaller communities might average 400. So it's a different scale for us for some other communities, but we don't want to lose the opportunity to ask those questions. It's a lot of money. We do have the money in the budget to pay for these initial phases, but we don't want to not ask questions that may be of benefit to us in the future. That does require an investment in feasibility and examining questions over time. We control those costs by not repeating questions, but we don't want to lose questions that we haven't quite asked just yet. Maybe another way to look at this is I know I want to buy a 4-door car. I don't know which 4-door car I want to buy just quite yet. So I need to buy one of 50 different 4-door cars. I know I'm not buying a truck. So if that's maybe a different way to look at that.
Yeah. Okay, Michael?
So we don't have the contract, and what I guess I would ask is look far more closely at the scope of that contract so that it's clear to the consultant to not go back to step 1 or even step 2, but we're already on step 3, 4, 5, because I don't want to spend $880,000 with them answering or verifying decisions that we already were pretty sure of.
Right.
Yes, Ted.
Yeah, thank you.
And Kip.
Yeah, we do have a very detailed scope of work from our consultant.
Right.
In fact, we had some discussion, and these two did recommend or want to put that in the council packet. I didn't really want to get into counting numbers of hours that were going to be spent on tasks with the council.
Right.
That's really staff's job. And so I was the one that pulled that out because that's not the level of detail that the policymakers should be getting into. you're asking the right questions. It's a lot of money. But it is not a design, but it is an engineering report, and we're going to get a tremendous amount of detail out of this. The process is very similar to what we went through with secondary. When we go through preliminary analysis, you get to where you know what you're going to build, you know where you're going to build it, you know the details about how you're going to operate at the time you're building it, and now you have to go out and design it. So I think it's a very similar process. I think it's the right process, and we'll certainly go through the scope of work very detailed with our consultant, and we have the same questions that you have, and want to control costs and make sure we're getting the right deliverable.
Okay. Mayor?
Yeah, we were fortunate to have the first anaerobic digester in the state in Whatcom County when we did the one for the manure management for the dairy farms, and we've learned a lot since that first installation went into place. And one of it was, what can you do with the product that's left? And I think that the advantage of this, first of all, is I'm not a fan of incineration, so I'm glad that we're looking at a different option. But secondly, that you make a waste a commodity. And without a lot of research into that, you could end up with a waste that you can't do anything with, too. And that's what happened to the first anaerobic digester in the county. It was very difficult for them to do anything with the waste that was left. So I think that we're being very prudent. I'll tell you, I'm the last person that would want to spend money on something I don't need to. And I think the staff needs to find out the answers so that we don't have to come back to you after we've already started this and say, oh my gosh, we didn't think of that, and now this is going to cost you more money. So this is a great direction that I think is being recommended.
Okay. Well,
The only other thing to add to that is this is what this particular consultant contract represents is probably about 2 years worth of work. So there is a lot of work that's going to go into it, and it's going to happen over an extended period of time. And that does certainly take some significant resources to provide that type of product.
Yeah, and this was for information only, but I want to thank you for the detailed information on it. Got it. When we see that kind of figure, we know the public's going to be asking, we're going to be asking, and I do understand when we're going to spend as much as we're going to spend on this, you don't want to get it built and then say, oh my goodness, I wish we would have went with that. So I understand we need to do it right the first time.
I appreciate that. One of our hopes is that by making an initial investment, that we have the confidence to make the decisions later on that, yes, it is expensive, but there was a very diligent and methodical thought process put into making those decisions. So,
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we have one more item before us today at the committee, and that's an ordinance of the City of Bellingham amending various sections of the Bellingham Municipal Code in order to adopt by reference several criminal codes of the revised Code of Washington. Peter, is this yours?
Yeah, Peter Raffato, Legal Department. So you have before you, and this is for information only at this point, an ordinance incorporating various provisions of the state statutes, 3 different criminal provisions that we need to adopt. We recommend adoption into the municipal code so they can be enforced in our municipal court. Ryan Anderson is here if there are any specific questions on these provisions, but as far as background, we do this to be consistent with state law. We do this periodically as new laws come on the books at the state level. The 3 provisions, as noted in the materials, are regarding disclosure of intimate images, surrender of weapons. This is something that can be ordered in a civil proceeding, a protection order proceeding. If there's a violation of that process, that would be a misdemeanor. And the 3rd item is failure to register as a sex offender. And so you have before you the ordinance and the RCW provisions. And with that, I'd ask if there are any questions. And again, this is for information. It would come back at I assume, the next council meeting for a first and second reading.
Committee, Gene?
Yeah, no, so Ryan Anderson from the City Attorney's Office. So no, it just means jurisdictionally these could be charged in the Bellingham Municipal Court. If someone had committed any of these offenses before we had adopted them, they would have been processed through district court. But obviously for, our officers investigating these crimes, it's just a lot easier if they can go through our system instead of having to pass them off to district court. But no, it certainly doesn't mean that people are getting away with them. So.
Okay. Any other questions? Any questions from council? Okay. Thank you, Peter. And that ends the committee. Yeah, that's
Great, we're going
done.
to take a 1-minute break, and then we're going to continue on to Lake Wacom.